And when they rolled a wound, they've got one more, so they got 3 hits. The High Elves lose 2, saved 1, so we'll pull 2 High Elves off. Now let's look at combat res from the flank. It gets wacky really quick. Alright, the ghouls. Ghouls killed 2, so there's 2 dice. They had, remember you count ranks at the front, there was 20 guys. Front rank doesn't count, so 1, 2, 3. There's 3 more dice. They're in the flank, and they're unit strength 5 or more, so there's another dice. And they actually outnumber because they lost 1, these guys lost 2, so that makes it 19 to 18, so they get +1 more. So you can see the ghouls have 7 points of combat res. The High Elves, unfortunately, you count ranks at the start. Their ranks are taken away because of being in the flank. They killed 1 ghoul, so they get 1 point. They have a standard, they get 1 point. They are outnumbered, so they get nothing. So you can see that the High Elves have 2, the ghouls have 6. The High Elves lose by 4. So that means if this was a typical battle, they would have to roll their leadership 9, subtract 4, so they'd have to roll a 5 to stay in combat. Okay, now the ghouls, unfortunately, have a special rule. They're undead. They cause fear. Well, you lose to a fear-causing unit that outnumbers you, you're going to flee unless you roll snake eyes. And I rolled an 11, so the High Elves would basically, when they flee, they would turn from these guys. The first turn you flee away from your opponent. So you would roll 2d6 in this case and move how far they flee. Flee movement is dictated by your overall move. What I mean is if your movement is 6 or less, then you roll 2d6. If it's 7 or more, you roll 3d6 for how far you go. So let's just finish this up. The High Elves actually went 10 inches. That's pretty good. The ghouls will try to chase them down. The ghouls got a 7. So they would roughly be about 3 inches behind. And that's the way that would work. You'd move these guys 10 inches this way, and then the ghouls would be 7 inches right behind them. And that's basically how the close combat works. Like I said, it's battles don't typically, last more than 1 or 2 turns. They're deadly. Unlike 40K, you can sometimes have, especially against Space Marines, you can have units just stuck in for a long time or against fearless opponents. As we talked about, getting into someone's flank is huge, huge bonus. Now, I don't know if I talked about this, but when you go to take a break test, even if you're outnumbered by fear causers, if you roll, and you roll this right here, yep, double ones, it's called insane courage. That means you hang around. You do not flee. These guys are going down. You have to, going down. They're not gonna run. All right, guys, that pretty much ends the close combat. That was quick and dirty. If you get multiple combats, then you would add, if you get into their flank, then as we talked about, it's huge. If you had 2 units of undead, you only get your rank bonus once. So if one unit had, +2, another one had +1, you would use the +2. You don't get to add them. Here again, if 2 units of undead hit him in the flank on both sides, then you get +1 total, not +1 for each side. However, you do get, if you happen to hit someone in the rear and in the flank, you do get the +2 for the rear and the +1. So if anyone tries to tell you different, well, punch them in the head. No, I'm just kidding. Don't punch them in the head. But yeah, they either don't know the rules or they're trying to pull a fast one on you. And that pretty much brings close combat to an end. Well, let me talk about one thing about challenges. The last part. All right, in challenges, that's assuming there's a character in the front row, front rank, for each unit. Then you can issue a challenge. Okay. Now you're thinking, well, what's the big deal? You can get overkill points. Let's say this guy was a character and he killed him by 4. If he only had 2 wounds, of course he would get the +2, but then he'd also get the +2 more for overkill. So each one, you know, counts. Unlike this other combat where overkill, there's no such thing. So that's an extra, you know, overkill can give you up to plus extra 5, which is huge. One thing about challenges is sometimes if you a unit champion can always accept the challenge, so he can protect your hero, especially if they're a wizard. Wizards don't fight too well. So when to issue a challenge and when not to issue a challenge, that's a whole nother separate of videos and depends on your army. So that one can't easily be answered. I typically, the only time I will take a unit champion, because to me they're most of the time not worth their points. But if I want to put a wizard in there, or they just have something insane, like these guys have great weapons, so they're strength 6. So yeah, these guys are good for killing cavalry and stuff. So yeah, I'm going to put a champion in there. If it's a little old spearman or something, the champion usually costs almost the same as one model. He's not worth it. So that concludes the actual close combat. One last thing we're going to talk about in this video is the weapons that are used in close combat. Alright, the weapons in close combat, there's quite a few of them. They're on page 56 of the big rule book. Don't know what page they're on the small rule book. But everybody in this game pretty much is considered to have a hand weapon. Basically, a hand weapon lets you attack at whatever your strength is. If you're strength 3, then you know your hand weapon, your attack will be at strength 3. Hand weapons are considered axes, swords, just nothing really special. The one thing the hand weapon gives you, which neither one of these have, is you can have a shield. A shield gives you +1 to your armor save. However, if you have a hand weapon, it gives you an additional +1. So that's +2. Now, the shield's extra +1 only counts from an attack in the front. So if you got hit in the flank, yeah, they would get the shield bonus of +1, but they would not get the extra +1 for an attack in the flank or the rear. So that's hand weapon and shields. Great weapons is what these are considered right here on these guys. These right here give you +2 to your strength. So a strength 4 elf would strike at strength 6. Okay, great weapons downside is they strike last. So the only way you're going to strike first with them is if you get the charge off, or if you're a high elf and you have the special rules that let you strike first. So great weapons can inflict a lot of damage. They're good at going after heavy armored targets, especially if you can get the charge off. So that's the downside. A great weapon on foot is +2 strength. If you have a great weapon and it's mounted in a chariot or on horse, it's only +1 strength instead of +2. That's a change in this edition. Last edition, most people were taking characters with great weapons and not magic weapons because they were just too good. Flails, which are rarely used or seen, they're only +2 strength on the first round of combat. They don't strike last like the great weapon. Morning Stars, I'm not sure who has Morning Stars besides the Bretonnian characters can have them. Basically, they give you +1 strength bonus for the first round of combat. That's sort of lame, not very good. Halberds also give you +1 strength bonus, but that is all the time. So a lot of like Empire halberdman guys are strength 4 with their halberds, so that's not bad. Lances, which are cavalry, they're +2 strength on the charge, so that here again, that's pretty good. And then the last thing are spears. Spears, if you charge, if the high elves had spears and they charged, the front rank would get to attack. Okay? If the ghouls charged and these guys had spears, then they defend in 2 ranks. Okay? That's for everybody. The high elves have a special rule where you add 1 to each one of that. And we just won't get into that. But spears are a pretty good defensive weapon. A lot of cheap troops like goblins, skaven, clan rats, they typically have spearmen. So, hope you enjoyed. This brings the close combat to a close. Hope you guys enjoyed it. There might be one more video on psychology and characters, but we're getting close to wrapping up the series. Again, sorry it took so long, but things have been busy lately. Have a good day, and of course, thanks for watching.